I spent $22,000 on a family vacation to Hawaii, dreaming of watching my grandbabies play in the ocean for the first time. But standing there at George Bush Airport in Houston, my son Travis looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dad, I forgot to buy your ticket. You need to go home." Right then, I knew. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was betrayal. 3 weeks later, I stood in that same airport with a man in a tailored suit beside me. Travis's family came through those arrival gates tanned and smiling, carrying plastic leis and souvenir bags from Honolulu. My granddaughter Maddie spotted me first and came running, her little arms stretched wide. But when Travis saw the man standing next to me, his Hawaiian vacation glow drained right out of his face. The man's name was J.D. Patterson. He's been practicing estate law in Houston for 30 years. And the envelope he handed my son that afternoon contained just 3 pages that would change everything. "Mr. Travis Morrison," J.D. said in that calm Texas drawl, "this is a copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed May 25, 2025. I watched my son's hands shake as he opened that envelope. Watched his wife Brandy read over his shoulder. Watched the exact moment they realized what abandoning a 72-year-old man at an airport actually costs. See? They thought I'd just go home quietly, cash the Social Security check, watch some TV, and forget about being treated like yesterday's trash. They had no idea that their $22,000 betrayal was about to cost them everything I'd spent 45 years building. Before I tell you how we got here, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me what time it is where you're watching. Now, let me take you back to where this whole mess started. 3 months earlier, my ranch house was filled with the kind of noise I'd been missing since my wife passed. It was a Sunday afternoon in February, right after church, and the whole family had gathered for what we Texans do best, a backyard barbecue. The smell of mesquite smoke drifted across my property as I tended the brisket I'd been smoking since dawn. Travis and his boy Tucker were tossing a football near Dot's rose garden, the one I still watered every evening like she'd asked me to. My granddaughter Maddie sat on the porch swing, practicing a song on her violin. Inside, Brandy was helping set the table while her parents, Charlene and Howard, brought out the sweet tea and pecan pie. This was what I'd been living for since Dot died 3 years ago. Family. Connection. Proof that the 45 years I spent working in the oil fields had built something that mattered. "Dad, can we talk for a minute?" Travis appeared at my elbow as I was pulling the brisket off the smoker. He had that smile on his face, the one he'd used since he was a boy when he wanted something. "Course, son. What's on your mind?" "Well, Brandy and I were thinking. It's been 3 years since Mom passed, and you've been so generous helping us out with, well, everything. We want to do something special for you." I set down my tongs, giving him my full attention. "What if we all took a trip together? Hawaii. The whole family. You always talked about taking Mom ocean." My chest tightened. Dot and I had talked about Hawaii for years, always putting it off for one reason or another. The business. Travis's college. Later, her illness. That sounds real nice. Travis. Real nice. We've been looking at resorts on Maui. Beautiful places. Ocean views. The kids would love it. He pulled out his phone, showing me pictures of white sand beaches and crystal clear water. "Thing is, Dad, with my real estate market being slow and Brandy not working anymore, we just can't swing it right now." I didn't even hesitate. "How much you need?" "Well, for all of us, you, me, Brandy, the kids, and Charlene and Howard, probably around 22,000. But Dad, we can wait, we can save up. I'll transfer it tomorrow." "This sounds perfect, son. Behind him, I caught Brandy watching us through the kitchen window. She turned away quickly when our eyes met. Later, as folks were leaving, Howard pulled me aside near my truck. The old accountant had always been straight with me. "Clay," he said quietly, glancing toward where Travis was loading kids into his SUV. "Just be careful with money, all right? I'm not saying anything specific, but just, be careful." I should have listened. May 15th started like any dream coming true. I'd been packed for 3 days, checking and rechecking my suitcase like a kid before his first camping trip. The Hawaii guidebook Dot had bought years ago sat on top, its pages worn from all my planning. I pulled my pickup into George Bush Airport's departure area at 1:30 sharp. Travis had told me to meet them at the Southwest Airlines counter by 2 o'clock. "Don't be late, Dad," he'd said. "You know how security lines get." I wasn't late. I was 30 minutes early, standing there with my rolling suitcase and the excitement of a man who thought he was about to make memories with his grandchildren. Then I saw Travis's face, and I knew. "Dad, we got a problem." He wouldn't look me in the eye. Just stared at the departure screens like they held the answers to questions he didn't want to ask. "I forgot to buy your ticket." The airport noise, rolling luggage, crying babies, gate announcements, it all seemed to fade away. "You forgot." With work being crazy and coordinating everything, it just slipped through the cracks. "I'm real sorry." I looked past him. Brandy stood near the security checkpoint with Maddie and Tucker. Charlene and Howard had their carry-ons already staged. Everyone ready to board. Everyone except me. "Well, let's fix it then." I moved toward the Southwest counter, pulling my suitcase behind me. The wheels caught on something, nearly jerking me off balance, but I kept going. This was fixable. Had to be. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need to get on today's flight to Honolulu. What do you have available?" The agent, a young woman with kind eyes, started typing. "Certainly, sir. What's the name on your reservation?" "Clayton Morrison." "But apparently there might be an issue with my booking." More typing. A pause. Her smile faltered. "Sir, I'm not showing any reservation under that name." "Are you sure it was Southwest Airlines?" My throat went tight. "My family has tickets." "Check under Travis Morrison." Her fingers moved across the keyboard, and I watched her screen's reflection in her glasses. "Yes, I do see a Morrison party. Reservation made 6 weeks ago for 4 passengers. 2 adults, 2 children, departing at 4:15 this afternoon." 6 weeks ago. Not yesterday. Not last week when Travis claimed he was finalizing everything. 6 weeks ago, when they'd already decided I wouldn't be going. "Can you tell me the names on that reservation?" She hesitated, glancing toward Travis, who'd stepped several feet away. "Sir. I'm not really supposed to." "Please." Something in my voice made her look back at her screen. "Travis Morrison, Brandy Morrison, Madison Morrison, and..." She paused, her expression shifting from professional to genuinely confused. "Dorothy Morrison." The airport tilted. "Dorothy. My dot. 3 years in the ground at Austin Memorial Park. That's my wife. She passed in 2022. The agent's face filled with sympathy that felt worse than any anger. "I'm so sorry for your loss, sir." They'd put a dead woman's name on the reservation rather than mine. I'd paid $22,000 to be replaced by a ghost. What about other flights? Anything today, tomorrow, stand by. She checked, her fingers flying with genuine eagerness to help. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. Convention season in Honolulu. We're completely booked." I have a waiting list of 38 people. I could get you on a flight next Tuesday, but it would be $1,800 without advance booking. Behind me, Travis's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at his watch. Dad, look. They're boarding. We gotta go through security. We'll call you from the hotel, figure something out. Figure something out. Travis, I paid for this whole trip. And we appreciate that. We really do. But standing here arguing isn't helping anybody. He was already backing toward security. Just go home, Dad. Get some rest. We'll talk later. Then he turned and walked away. Didn't run. Didn't look back. Just walked through that security checkpoint like he hadn't just left his 72-year-old father standing alone in an airport terminal. I stood there watching the departure board until Southwest Flight 2847 to Honolulu changed from boarding to departed. The keys to my pickup truck felt heavy as stones in my pocket. The drive from Houston back to my ranch takes 45 minutes on a good day. Today it felt like hours. I-10 West stretched out before me, the same highway I'd driven for 45 years going to and from the refineries. The Texas plains rolled past my windows, flat, endless, honest. Out here, things made sense. You worked hard, you got paid. You treated people right, they treated you right. Simple math. Except my own son had just proven that math didn't apply to family. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The radio played some old country song about hard times and harder lessons, but I turned it off. I needed silence to process what had just happened. They'd used my dead wife's name. Put Dot on that reservation like she was just another booking error. Not the woman I'd loved for 43 years. Not the mother who'd raised Travis, who'd sacrificed so he could have opportunities we never had growing up. The ranch house sat exactly as I'd left it 2 hours ago. Porch light on. Dot's wind chime still hanging by the door, making that soft metal sound she'd loved. The roses in her memorial garden were starting to bloom, pink and white against the Texas sun. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I'd imagined coming home in 10 days to unpack souvenirs and photos. Instead, I was unpacking nothing but betrayal. My office sat at the back of the house, where Dot used to keep her sewing room. After she passed, I'd moved in my desk, my engineering certificates, the photos from my Navy days in Vietnam. Everything organized. Everything in its place. The filing cabinet's second drawer held a folder labeled Hawaii 2025 in my careful handwriting. I pulled it out and spread the contents across the desk. Bank transfer. Receipt, $22,000 to Travis Morrison, dated April 3rd. Hotel confirmation, Grand Aloha Resort, Ocean View Suites, May 15th to 25th. Activity bookings, snorkeling tour, luau dinner, helicopter ride. And then, clipped to the back, I found something that made my blood run cold. Printed emails. Travis must have sent them to me weeks ago about coordination details, but I'd never scrolled down past his message to see the conversation thread below. The first was from Brandy to Travis, dated March 28th. Talk to Mom. She agrees Dad will be too tired for most activities anyway. Honestly, this might be better as just our family time. The kids need bonding with us, not constant grandpa spoiling. Travis's response, you're probably right. How do we handle it though? Brandy again. Let's wait until the last minute. Tell him there was a booking error. He'll be disappointed but he won't make a scene. Your dad never makes scenes. My hands shook holding those papers. This wasn't a forgotten ticket. This was premeditated. Calculated. They'd sat around their dinner table and strategized how to steal from me and exclude me in the kindest way possible. Well, I was about to teach them about scenes. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the hotel confirmation. Grand Aloha Resort, this is Keone speaking. How may I provide you with excellent service today? I need to cancel a reservation under Morrison. Party of 4, checking in today. A pause. Typing sounds. Yes, sir, I show that reservation. May I ask why you're canceling? Perhaps I can offer an alternative. Cancel it. All of it. Right now. Sir, I must inform you that canceling this close to arrival carries a penalty fee of $3,400. $3,400. Less than what I spent on Travis's mortgage last year alone. That's acceptable. Cancel it. More typing. The sound of a printer. Official business being conducted. The cancellation is processed, Mr. Morrison. You should receive email confirmation within the hour. Is there anything else? When someone arrives expecting that reservation, what will you tell them? I'll inform them the reservation was cancelled by the primary account holder at 6:47 p.m. Central Time on May 15th. Perfect. They'd know exactly when I'd taken action. And more importantly, they'd know it was deliberate. Thank you, Keone. You've been very helpful. I hung up and looked at those emails again. Brandy's words, your dad never makes scenes. She was right. The old Clay Morrison didn't make scenes. But that man had just been left at an airport by his own son. I spent that evening on my front porch, watching the hill country sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Dot's old rocking chair creaked in the familiar rhythm I'd heard for decades. In my hand, a glass of Texas bourbon sat untouched, mostly there for the weight of it. My phone sat on the side table, turned off. Peaceful. At 6:47, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Travis's family would be starting their descent into Honolulu. By 7:15, they'd be collecting luggage. By 8 o'clock, they'd be pulling up to the Grand Aloha Resort, tired but excited. Ready to check into rooms that no longer existed. I waited until 9 o'clock before turning my phone back on. It took 3 full minutes for all the notifications to load. 47 missed calls. All from a Hawaii number. The call log told a story better than any novel I'd ever read. 6:12 p.m. Hawaii time. That'd be 11:12 Texas time. First call, probably from the resort. Lobby. 6:17. 6:23. 6:31. Every few minutes like clockwork. Then they got desperate. 6:45. 6:48. 6:52. Calls coming every 3 minutes. Now. By midnight Hawaii time, they were calling every 15 minutes. I poured myself a fresh bourbon and played the voicemails. The first one, Travis's voice carried confusion more than anger. Dad, hey, call me back when you get this. There's some kind of mix-up with the hotel reservation. They're saying it was cancelled. Just need you to call them and straighten it out. Still thought it was a mistake. Still thought I'd fix it for him. Message 6, recorded at 8:41 Hawaii time. Brandy's voice now, higher pitched. Dad Willis, we really need you to call back. The kids are exhausted and we have nowhere to go. Every hotel is booked because of some convention. Please, just call the resort and tell them there was an error. Message 14. Travis again, anger creeping in. Dad, this isn't funny. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you need to fix this right now. We're sitting in a hotel lobby with 2 crying kids. Call me back. I took a sip of bourbon and kept listening. Message 23. Past midnight Hawaii time. Travis's voice was raw now, exhausted. We spent the night on lobby chairs. Maddie hasn't stopped crying. Pearl keeps asking what's happening. This is cruel, Dad. Cruel and petty and completely unlike you. Call me back and fix this mess. Unlike me. That phrase stuck. He was right. This was unlike the old me. Message 31, recorded at 3:47 a.m. Hawaii time. Travis had moved past anger into something darker. You're going to regret this. Old man. You hear me? When we get back to Texas, there will be consequences. You think you can manipulate this family with money? We'll see about that. I replayed that 3 times. Writing down every word in my engineer's notebook. The same notebook where I'd logged technical specifications for 45 years. Precise. Methodical. Admissible. Then came message 42. Not Travis's voice. Charlene's. Clay, honey, it's Charlene. Her Texas drawl was thick with tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were planning this. Howard and I thought you were coming with us. What they did to you at that airport. I'm ashamed to be part of this. I tried to tell Brandy this was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. I am so sorry. I saved that one separately. The bourbon sat finished now. The hill country night had gone quiet except for cicadas and Dot's wind chimes. 47 calls. Dozens of voicemails. Threats recorded. An apology from someone who actually had a conscience. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer. Tonight, I'd sleep better than I had in 3 months. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30 like I had every day for the past 50 years. Made coffee in the same percolator Dot and I got as a wedding gift. Scrambled 2 eggs. Toast with butter. Then I showered, put on my good slacks and the button-down shirt I wore to church, and drove my pickup back to Houston. J.D. Patterson's office sat on the 19th floor of a glass tower downtown. The kind of building that charged by the hour and delivered results worth every penny. I'd called him at 7 that morning. By 9:15, I was sitting in his conference room with a view of the whole city spread out below. J.D. was 58, silver-haired, with the calm confidence of a man who'd spent 30 years solving other people's complicated problems. We'd worked together when Dot passed, handling her affairs with the kind of professional precision that made difficult times manageable. Now I spread my documentation across his mahogany table like evidence at a trial. Bank statements. Transfer receipts. Printed emails. My engineer's notebook with 47 call logs numbered and timestamped. Clay, J.D. said, leaning back in his leather chair. Tell me. Everything. So I did. The Hawaii trip. The airport abandonment. My wife's name on a reservation she'd never use. The hotel cancellation. The voicemails that went from panic to threats in 12 hours. J.D. took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking questions that revealed decades of experience with family disputes. When I finished, he studied my documentation for a long moment. How long has this financial dependency been going on? I pulled out another folder. 23 years. Since I co-signed his first apartment lease after college. And how much total? I'd done the math last night while listening to those voicemails. $58,000 in the past 2 years alone. Mortgage help when real estate was slow. Credit card payments when Brandy stopped working. Car repairs. School supplies for the grandkids. Medical bills. All of it disguised as loans that were never repaid. J.D. wrote something on his pad, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Clay, Texas law is very clear on testamentary freedom. That means you have absolute right to leave your estate to whoever you choose. And with this documentation, especially these recorded threats, we have ironclad grounds for disinheritance. Meaning if you want to exclude Travis completely from your will, I can structure it to withstand any legal challenge he might bring. The city stretched out beyond the windows. Houston, where I'd worked for 45 years. Where I'd built a life and a legacy. Where my son thought he could threaten me without consequences. I want him excluded entirely. Everything goes to charity. For the next hour, we discussed details. The Texas Veterans Foundation would get $400,000. Austin Children's Education Fund would receive $300,000. And the biggest portion, $500,000, would establish the Dorothy Morrison Memorial Engineering Scholarship at the University of Texas. That would have loved that. Her name helping kids who couldn't afford college, kids like we'd been once. We'll need witnesses, JD said. Notarization. And I strongly recommend video recording of the signing to document your complete mental competency. That way if Travis claims you were manipulated or confused, we have proof. Whatever it takes. When can we do this? He checked his calendar. I can have documents ready by Friday. We'll execute them here with my staff as witnesses. I shook his hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Walking back to my truck in the parking garage, I felt something I hadn't felt since Dot died. Purpose. Direction. The certainty that I was doing exactly what needed to be done. Travis wanted to play hardball. Perfect. I'd spent 4 decades negotiating with men who thought engineering degrees made you soft. None of them ever made that mistake twice. 3 weeks passed like water through a creek. Slow, steady, inevitable. I fell into the rhythm I'd known since Dot died. Coffee at dawn. Watering her rose garden while the hill country was still cool. Lunch at noon, usually something simple. Afternoons spent reading on the porch or tinkering with the old tractor she'd always wanted me to fix. Sundays meant First Baptist Church of Austin. Same pew I'd sat in for 40 years. That's where Martha and Whitfield cornered me after service on the second Sunday. She was 74, widowed like me, and had never been shy about speaking her mind. Clay Morrison, she said, her hand on my arm as we stood in the fellowship hall. I heard some things about Travis and that Hawaii business. News travels fast in a church family. I expect you did, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. Those grandbabies, Clay. You sure about all this? Maddie and Tucker didn't do anything wrong. Her words hit harder than I expected. That night, I found myself in my office, going through old boxes I hadn't opened in years. Home videos from the 90s. Travis at 8 years old, standing in Lake Travis with a fishing pole. Grinning at the camera while I showed him how to cast. His voice, high and excited, yelling "Mom, Mom, I got one" when he caught his first base. Dot behind the camera, laughing. That's my boy. Just like your daddy. I sat there in the dark, watching that little boy who'd grown into a man I didn't recognize. My hand reached for the phone twice, JD's number ready to dial. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe family was supposed to forgive. Then I saw Dot's journal on the shelf. The one she'd kept during her illness. I opened it to a random page, and there, in her careful handwriting from June 2021, I found what I needed. Clayton is the kindest man I've ever known. But sometimes I worry people mistake that kindness for weakness. I hope when I'm gone, he remembers that being good doesn't mean being a doormat. Real love sometimes means tough consequences. I closed the journal and put the phone down. Friday morning, I drove back to Houston to sign the papers that would change everything. 3 weeks to the day after they'd left me standing alone at George Bush Airport, I came back. But this time, I wasn't alone. JD stood beside me near the Southwest arrivals gate. His leather portfolio tucked under one arm. He wore a dark suit that said lawyer without needing to announce it. We'd timed this perfectly. Flight 2891 from Honolulu was due to land at 2:17. It touched down at 2:14. The first passengers started trickling through the doors around 2:40. Families with leis around their necks. Couples carrying duty-free shopping bags. Sunburned tourists already missing the beach. Then I saw them. Charlene came first, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and pulling a suitcase plastered with Maui stickers. Howard followed. Quieter than usual, his face showing the patient exhaustion of a man who'd spent 3 weeks listening to family drama. Behind them came Maddie and Tucker. My granddaughter had a grass skirt over her shorts and carried a plastic ukulele. Tucker wore a lei made of fake flowers, his 7-year-old face lit up with the kind of joy only a good vacation can bring. Then Maddie saw me. Grandpa. She broke away from the group and ran, her ukulele bouncing against her side. Tucker followed, both of them crashing into me with the uncomplicated love that only grandchildren can offer. I knelt down and hugged them both, feeling their small arms around my neck. For just a moment, doubt crept back in. These babies didn't deserve what was about to happen. But then I looked up and saw Travis's face. He'd stopped walking entirely. His Hawaiian shirt hung loose over khaki shorts, his vacation tan suddenly looking sickly under the fluorescent airport lights. His eyes moved from me to JD, taking in the suit, the portfolio, the official nature of this encounter. Dad. His voice carried a weariness that might have been guilt or might have been annoyance. I couldn't tell anymore. What are you doing here? Welcoming you home, I said, standing up and gently positioning the kids beside me. How was your vacation? Brandy appeared at his elbow, her expression shifting from confusion to something approaching alarm as she noticed JD's presence. That's when JD stepped forward. Mr. Travis Morrison. His voice carried the formal weight of official business. He extended a manila envelope toward my son with the precise movement of a man who'd done this before. Travis's hand trembled as he took it. This is a copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed May 25, 2025. The airport noise, announcements, luggage wheels, conversations, seemed to fade into background static. Everyone's attention focused on that envelope like it was a bomb. What is this? Brandy whispered, reading the return address. Travis broke the seal with jerky movements. He unfolded the papers and started reading, his eyes moving rapidly across the legal text. I watched his face transform. Confusion. Disbelief. Then horror as he reached the section about complete disinheritance. This can't be real. Brandy leaned over his shoulder. Her face draining of color as she processed the words. Lee, she said, her voice shaking. Surely we can discuss this. Think about the children. They're your grandchildren. I did think about them. I replied. That's why I'm establishing scholarship funds that'll help children like them for generations. Travis's head snapped up from the documents, his eyes blazing with desperate fury. You can't do this to us. I'm your son. You're the son who left me stranded at an airport and threatened me when I stood up for myself. Charlene, finally understanding what was happening, started crying. Travis, she said through tears. I tried to warn you. I told you this was wrong. Howard put his arm around his wife but looked at Travis with an accountant's cold assessment of bad investments. Son, you brought this on yourself. I'll contest it, Travis said, his voice rising enough to attract stares from other travelers. This won't stand. I'll get lawyers, I'll prove you weren't thinking clearly. JD spoke with professional calm that cut through Travis's panic like a blade. Please do, Mr. Morrison. I have video deposition of your father's complete mental competency. I also have recordings of your threatening voicemails. I'd be happy to share them with any attorney you hire. Fair warning though, frivolous litigation can be expensive. That's when Maddie tugged on my jacket. Grandpa, why is Daddy yelling? I looked down at her confused face and felt the weight of what this moment would mean for her future. But some lessons can't be taught, only learned through consequences. I knelt down to her level. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that have big consequences, sweetheart. Your daddy made some choices, and now he's learning that actions matter. Clay, please, Brandy tried one more time. But I was already standing, already turning toward the exit with JD beside me. Behind us, Travis's voice called out. Still trying to negotiate, still unable to accept that some consequences are permanent. We walked through those airport corridors in silence. The same halls where 3 weeks ago I'd dragged my suitcase alone, confused and betrayed. Now I walked beside my attorney, as a man who'd reclaimed his dignity through principled action. That went exactly as planned, JD said quietly as we reached the parking garage. Better, I replied. He revealed his character perfectly in front of witnesses. The afternoon sun hit us as we stepped outside. Somewhere behind us, Travis's family was still processing their new reality. But I was driving home to a ranch house that finally felt peaceful again. That evening, I sat on my front porch watching the sun set over the hill country. The same view Dot and I had watched together for 43 years. The sky turned those impossible shades of orange and purple that only Texas seems to get right. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Mr. Morrison, this is Caroline Jeffers from the University of Texas Development Office. I wanted to personally thank you for establishing the Dorothy Morrison Memorial Engineering Scholarship. We'll be able to help 12 students this fall who otherwise couldn't afford tuition. 12 kids. 12 futures that wouldn't have existed without Dot's name attached to them. The next call came from the Texas Veterans Foundation. Mr. Morrison, your contribution provides transitional housing for 8 homeless veterans. Men and women who served their country, just like you did. I drove to Austin Memorial Park as the sun finished setting. Dot's headstone sat beneath an old oak tree. Exactly where she'd wanted. I placed fresh bluebonnets on her grave, the Texas state flower she'd loved. Did right by our name, Dot, I said to the granite marker. Our money's helping folks who deserve it. The mailbox held one envelope when I got home. A letter addressed in a child's careful handwriting. Dear Grandpa, I don't understand everything that happened. But Grandma Charlene says you're teaching Daddy about respect and consequences. She says that's what good men do. I miss you. I love you. Please don't stop being my grandpa. Love, Maddie. I sat in Dot's rocking chair and cried for the first time since her funeral. But these weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when you finally do something right.